Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the eeriest chapters in Hollywood history, 21 Golden Age actors who eerily predicted their own tragic ends. Take it easy driving. The life you save might be mine. Those haunting words were spoken by James Dean, just weeks before the crash that took his life. But he wasn't the only one. From whispered warnings to documented visions, these iconic stars sensed their own deaths with chilling accuracy. These weren't vague gut feelings. They were specific, unsettling predictions that later came true, almost as if fate was already written. Even more disturbing? Studio executives allegedly knew and stayed silent. What if the most glamorous era in Hollywood was hiding a dark, unspoken truth? By the end of this video, you'll see how these beloved stars tried to warn the world, and why no one believed them until it was too late. James Dean, the omen no one took seriously. James Dean didn't just fear an early death, he felt it coming. 1 week before his tragic crash, actor Alec Guinness took one look at Dean's brand new Porsche Spyder and recoiled. He warned Dean with chilling precision, "If you get in that car, you'll be dead by this time next Thursday." Dean shrugged it off with a laugh. Exactly 7 days later, September 30th, 1955, James Dean's broken body was pulled from the wreckage of that very car on a lonely California highway. He was only 24. What makes this story even more haunting is Dean's eerie public service announcement filmed just days before. Looking straight into the camera, he said, "The life you might save might be mine." After his death, the studio shelved the footage, too unsettling to air. But the signs didn't stop there. For months, Dean had been plagued by nightmares, visions of twisting highways, shrieking tires, and metal grinding against metal. On the set of Giant, Elizabeth Taylor later recalled Dean confiding in her, "I've got a custom-built coffin waiting for me around the corner." She thought he was just being dark and dramatic, until the call came in. His mechanic, Rolf Wutherich, who survived the crash, remembered Dean's final words moments before impact. "That guy's got to stop. He's got to see us." It was as if Dean knew, truly knew, that death was bearing down on him. Director Nicholas Ray, who worked closely with Dean, may have said it best. He played the doomed youth so well because he wasn't acting. Maybe that's why his performances felt so raw, so real, because James Dean was living his own final script. Carole Lombard, the flight she feared and couldn't escape. Carole Lombard, Hollywood's beloved queen of screwball comedy, lived with a chilling, recurring nightmare, dying in a plane crash. In January 1942, that nightmare turned heartbreakingly real. After wrapping up a whirlwind war bond tour, she was supposed to take a train home. But love pulled her in another direction. Eager to reunite with her husband, Clark Gable, she chose to fly instead. The signs were everywhere. A fortune teller had warned her in no uncertain terms, "Do not fly." At the airport, Lombard hesitated, gripped by a strange sense of dread. "I have a bad feeling about this trip," she confided to her mother at the gate. Hours later, her plane slammed into Potosi Mountain near Las Vegas under a clear, star-filled sky, killing all 22 passengers aboard. The news shattered Hollywood and destroyed Clark Gable. But what few people know is that Carole's fear wasn't just vague intuition. Her close friend, Melanie Fields, revealed that Lombard had seen the mountain in her dreams, described in haunting detail, wrapped in stars. It was as if she'd seen her own death coming. Even more disturbing, Lombard hadn't wanted to board the plane. Government officials had urged her to fly, insisting her swift return was a patriotic duty. Had she taken the train as originally planned, she would have lived. Instead, her terrifying vision became fate. She was just 33 years old. Clark Gable was never the same. Grief-stricken, he enlisted in the Army Air Forces, telling friends he didn't care whether he lived or died. 18 years later, on his deathbed in 1960, Gable reportedly whispered, "I'm going to her now." Perhaps his own soul finally catching up to the woman whose loss he never stopped mourning, Errol Flynn. The death he dared to schedule. Errol Flynn didn't just live fast. He raced toward the finish line with his eyes wide open. The legendary swashbuckler, known as much for his wild escapades as his iconic roles, seemed to sense that his time was running out. In his hauntingly prophetic autobiography, finished just months before he died, Flynn wrote, "I know precisely what I am doing. I simply won't last the year out." He was right. In October 1959, while in Vancouver after days of hard partying, Flynn suffered a massive heart attack. Doctors were stunned. His body, ravaged by years of excess, resembled that of a man far older than 50. But what chilled them most wasn't how he died. It was how clearly he had seen it coming. Just 2 weeks before his death, Flynn revised his will and mailed farewell letters to close friends. It wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. Even on the set of his final film, Cuban Rebel Girls, Flynn seemed to speak from beyond the veil. "This is the last movie I'll ever make," he told the director. When asked why, he tapped his chest and said, "The old ticker's running out of time." His personal physician later revealed that Flynn had asked detailed questions about heart attack symptoms, describing, almost word for word, the exact fate he would soon meet. When the doctor asked why, Flynn replied with eerie calm, "I want to recognize the horseman when he comes for me." And perhaps the most iconic farewell of all? His epitaph, one he penned himself long before the end. "I've had a hell of a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed every minute of it." Errol Flynn knew the clock was ticking, but he didn't run from death. He danced with it, laughed in its face, and lived every second like it might be his last. Marilyn Monroe. Her final goodbye. On the night of August 4, 1962, Marilyn Monroe's phone line buzzed with what now feel like haunting farewells. To actor Peter Lawford, she chillingly said, "Say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself, because you're a nice guy." To her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, her last words were even more ominous. "This is the last time you'll make my bed." Murray dismissed it as melodrama, until she found Marilyn's lifeless body the next morning. Just days earlier, in what would be her final interview with Life magazine, Monroe spoke with eerie candor, "I don't want to be Joan of Arc all the time. I want to live my own life, now and then." The article's tragic title? Marilyn Monroe talks about the future. But hidden beneath the headlines was a darker truth. Monroe had been writing in a red leather diary, a diary that vanished mysteriously after her death. According to her close friend and masseur Ralph Roberts, the diary contained not just secrets, but warnings, names of people she feared, and a chilling prediction: "If anything happens to me, you'll know who to blame." Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, later confirmed that Marilyn had been fixated on death in their final sessions. She didn't cry for help, she asked detailed questions about painless ways to die. It wasn't desperation, he said. It was planning. And yet, Monroe had made plans. She had a meeting scheduled the next morning with film producer Ray Stark. She set her alarm clock. She laid out her clothes. These are not the actions of someone planning to disappear, they're the signs of someone expecting tomorrow. So what really happened that night? Was it suicide? A staged accident? Or Marilyn's final performance, hiding a truth too dangerous to tell? Montgomery Clift, the man who counted down to his own death. After a devastating car crash in 1956 left his face disfigured and his spirit shattered, Montgomery Clift turned to his close friend Elizabeth Taylor and whispered, "I'm not going to make it much longer, Liz." From that moment on, he began quietly marking an X through each passing day on a private countdown calendar, almost as if he knew his time was running out. Exactly 4 years later, nearly to the day, Clift was found dead from a heart attack at just 45. What's haunting is how eerily precise his premonition was. His journals, sealed until 2010, contained chilling entries, including one that read, "When the clock strikes, I'll know it's time." The studio was so unsettled by the contents, they tried to buy the journals from his estate after his death to keep them buried. Clift's friend, actor Kevin McCarthy, later revealed that Monty had predicted not only the age he'd die, but the cause, telling director Fred Zinnemann during From Here to Eternity, "My heart feels like a time bomb." His brother, Brooks Clift, would go on to share that Monty had assembled a small, morbid box with specific instructions for his funeral, songs, poems, everything. He updated it regularly, like a man preparing for a departure he was certain would come. But perhaps the most haunting detail of all, on the night he died, Clift watched The Misfits, his film with Marilyn Monroe, and made one final phone call to his old friend Nancy Walker. He simply said, I think it's time for the curtain. Hours later, fell. Forever. George Sanders, the man who scheduled his own death. Oscar-winning actor George Sanders was the epitome of old-world sophistication, sharp-tongued, elegant, and unapologetically cynical. Best known for his role in All About Eve, Sanders didn't just perform drama, he lived it. In 1972, at age 65, he checked into a hotel near Barcelona, swallowed 5 bottles of Nembutal, and left behind a haunting suicide note. "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored. I feel I have lived long enough. I am leaving you with your worries in this sweet cesspool." But here's the chilling part. Sanders had written that exact note 5 years earlier. He carried it with him everywhere, waiting, planning. Friends recalled how he often said he would end his life at 65, and he did, down to the day. This wasn't a moment of despair. It was a deliberate finale, years in the making. As far back as 1960, during the filming of Village of the Damned, Sanders told director Wolf Rilla, "I'll give myself another decade, then check out." When pressed for a reason, his answer was blunt. After 65, life becomes a bore and illness a burden. His ex-wife, Zsa Zsa Gabor, later shared that Sanders had long been fascinated with the idea of choosing one's exit. "George always said a gentleman should decide when to leave the party," she recalled. He didn't want to be dragged out after the lights came up. True to his word, Sanders meticulously researched ways to die, choosing barbiturates, building tolerance over time, even rehearsing his final act like the ultimate stage performance. His death wasn't a cry for help. It was his curtain call, scripted, rehearsed, and executed with haunting precision. Thelma Todd, the starlet who predicted her own murder. Known as the Ice Cream Blonde, comedy actress Thelma Todd lit up the screen with her charm, but behind the scenes, she lived in fear. In late 1935, she confided in friends that someone was out to kill her. On December 16th of that year, she was found dead in her garage, slumped over the wheel of her car, poisoned by carbon monoxide. Authorities called it a suicide, but the signs screamed otherwise. Just days before her death, Todd warned her maid, "If anything happens to me, don't believe for a second it was an accident." She had received anonymous threats, chilling notes warning her to shut down her booming restaurant, Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe, a hot spot that ruffled feathers among mob-controlled businesses. Her business partner, Roland West, later admitted she had shown him one of those threatening letters only a week before she died. Even more unsettling? Todd had recently consulted a lawyer about changing her will and increasing her life insurance. When asked why, she replied, "I don't expect to be around much longer." The district attorney investigating the case received death threats of his own, and crucial evidence vanished without a trace. Officially, the case remains unsolved. But Thelma Todd's haunting prediction came true, down to the last terrifying detail. John Garfield, the star who saw his death coming. John Garfield, the brooding heartthrob of The Postman Always Rings Twice, had been living under a shadow his whole life, a weak heart he knew would one day give out. Since childhood, he battled a condition doctors warned could strike at any moment. But it wasn't just illness that wore him down, it was the brutal pressure of being blacklisted during the McCarthy era. In 1952, overwhelmed and exhausted, he confided to director Abraham Polanski, "My heart can't take much more of this." Just 3 weeks later, on May 21st, he collapsed in a friend's apartment and died of a heart attack. He was only 39. But what chills the soul is what came before. In the months leading up to his death, Garfield had been secretly journaling his symptoms: shortness of breath, tightness in the chest, as if he were tracking the countdown to his final moment. After his death, his ex-wife Roberta found the notebook. One heartbreaking entry read simply, "Pressure building. Time running short." During the filming of his last movie, Garfield kept pushing himself through chest pain, stopping often to catch his breath. When urged to see a doctor, he shrugged it off and said, "What's the point? When your number's up, it's up." The night before he died, Garfield went to a Broadway play. As the lights dimmed, he turned to his companion and said something that still haunts those who knew him, "I've been living on borrowed time since I was 7 years old. I've always known how this would end." By morning, his prophecy had come true. Alan Ladd, the pool that called to him. Hollywood heartthrob Alan Ladd, best remembered for his iconic role in Shane, lived a life filled with adoration on the screen, but behind the fame was a man battling deep shadows. In his later years, Ladd struggled silently with depression and a growing dependence on alcohol and sedatives. Then came January 1964. He was found dead in his Palm Springs home, an apparent overdose that shocked fans around the world. But what haunts this story isn't just the tragedy, it's the eerie, almost prophetic obsession Ladd had with his swimming pool. According to his son, David, Ladd was tormented by recurring nightmares of drowning, dreams where he couldn't reach the surface. And in 1962, those nightmares nearly became reality when he was found unconscious in the very same pool after what many believed was a suicide attempt. He survived, but chillingly told his doctor, "Next time, no one will find me in time." In the weeks leading up to his death, Ladd became fixated on water. His housekeeper recalled how he'd sit for hours, just staring at the pool, whispering, "It's calling me, soon I'll answer." Though he didn't die by drowning, his body was found beside the pool, his final moments eerily echoing the visions that had haunted him. It wasn't the water that took him. But in a way, the pool claimed him all the same. Carol Landis, the date she marked for death. Carol Landis was more than a blonde bombshell. She was a rising star with a haunting secret. In the summer of 1948, she quietly circled a date on her calendar, July 5th. When her housekeeper casually asked what it meant, Landis offered a chilling reply, "You'll find out." And the world did. On that very date, Carol Landis took her own life with a fatal dose of Seconal. She was just 29. What makes her death so haunting isn't just the act itself, but how meticulously she prepared for it. In the days leading up to July 5th, she settled her bills, wrote heartfelt letters to friends, and even canceled deliveries starting July 6th, as if she knew, with terrifying clarity, that she wouldn't be here. Her close friend, actress Gail Russell, later shared their final conversation. When Gail begged her to see a doctor, Carol looked her in the eye, smiled sadly, and said, "It's too late for that. I've already made my appointment with something else." This wasn't a cry for help. It was a final, deliberate act. A date with destiny marked in ink for the world to see, but tragically, no one understood the message until it was far too late. Gig Young, the chilling wedding day tragedy he seemed to predict. He was an Oscar-winning actor with charm, talent, and a darkness few truly understood. In 1978, Hollywood was rocked to its core when Gig Young shot his 31-year-old bride of just 3 weeks inside their Manhattan apartment, before turning the gun on himself. But what made this tragedy even more horrifying was the fact that Young had been foreshadowing it for years. During his troubled marriage to actress Elizabeth Montgomery, Young often joked that a murder-suicide was the only way out of a bad relationship. The jokes were so frequent and disturbing that Montgomery's father once begged her to leave him for her own safety. Even his longtime agent, Martin Bowell, admitted that the actor had long been obsessed with stories of Hollywood murder-suicides, frequently bringing them up in conversation. "We thought it was just his morbid sense of humor," Bowell said. "Eventually, we stopped taking it seriously." But the most chilling moment came during the filming of They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, the very movie that won Young his Academy Award. He reportedly told director Sidney Pollack, "I'll probably be remembered for shooting myself one day." He was right. But no one could have imagined that his tragic legacy would also claim the life of his young bride. Would you like a YouTube-style hook or title to go with this as well? Jean Harlow, the original platinum blonde bombshell, once made a chilling confession to friends. She would never live past 26. When asked why, she simply pointed to a fortune teller's haunting prediction from her teenage years. On June 7, 1937, the prophecy came true. Harlow died of kidney failure at exactly 26, sending shockwaves through Hollywood, not just because of her untimely death, but because of how eerily accurate her premonition had been. But what most people don't know is just how specific her vision of death was. According to her mother, Jean didn't just foresee the age, she described the symptoms, too. "I'll get very tired, and then I'll go to sleep," she reportedly said years before. And in the weeks leading up to her death, she began giving away personal belongings to friends, often with handwritten notes that read, "Remember me by this." Even her co-star Spencer Tracy sensed something was wrong. While filming Libeled Lady, Harlow whispered to him, "I won't be around to make many more of these." The most haunting moment of all came on the set of her final film, Saratoga. Jean collapsed and turned to the director, Jack Conway, and said, "I won't finish this picture." She was right. The movie was only completed with a stand-in filmed from behind, just as she had predicted. Barbara Payton, the star who predicted her own downfall. Barbara Payton wasn't just a Hollywood cautionary tale, she called her own collapse years before it happened. In the early 1950s, she was a rising bombshell, gracing screens with sultry confidence and raw talent. But behind the glamour was a woman already haunted by the shadow of her future. At the height of her fame in 1963, she chillingly told a reporter, "I'll end up in the gutter. Mark my words." Just 4 years later, her words became heartbreakingly true. Homeless and broken, she was seen wandering Sunset Boulevard, trading herself for drinks, lost in a haze of addiction. In 1967, she died of heart and liver failure at just 39. Her eerie foresight didn't end there. While filming Bride of the Gorilla in 1951, she warned co-star Raymond Burr, "This won't last. I'll be on the streets before I'm 40. When Burr laughed it off, she insisted, "You'll see. I know exactly where I'm headed." Her ex-husband, actor Frank Tone, tried again and again to pull her from the brink. But Barbara wouldn't let him. "Don't waste your money," she told him. "I've got a date with the gutter I can't miss." This wasn't drama, it was prophecy. In her final known interview, given to a small paper while she was living on the streets, Barbara spoke with haunting clarity, "I always knew I'd end up here. Some people are born for happy endings. Others aren't. I saw this coming clear as day." Her life was a tragedy written in advance, and read like a script she refused to rewrite. William Holden, the tragic prophecy he couldn't escape. William Holden was a Hollywood legend, an Academy Award-winning actor whose charm lit up the screen, but behind the spotlight, he carried a haunting fear, dying alone. In the late 1970s, as alcohol quietly tightened its grip on him, Holden confided to his longtime partner, Stephanie Powers, "One day I'll probably fall, hit my head, and there won't be anyone around to help." That chilling prediction came true in November 1981. Holden, heavily intoxicated, tripped on a throw rug in his apartment, struck his head on a nightstand, and bled to death, completely alone. His body wasn't found for days. What made it even more haunting? He had tried to prevent exactly this fate. Powers revealed that Holden had removed most rugs from his home and even installed grip bars in his bathroom, desperate to defy what he saw coming. In the weeks before his death, he began calling old friends to make peace. Faye Dunaway, his network co-star, said Holden reached out unexpectedly to apologize for a long-past argument on set. "It was like he was tying up loose ends," she recalled. In his final completed film, Holden portrayed a man attempting suicide. After one particularly heavy scene, he turned to director Blake Edwards and quietly said, "This one cuts a little too close." When Edwards asked what he meant, Holden's response was bone-chilling. "I know how my story ends. And it's not pretty." Lupe Velez, Hollywood's fiery Mexican Spitfire, dreamed of a beautiful, poetic farewell. In 1944, she carefully staged her final scene. A candlelit bedroom, soft music, delicate flowers, and a silk-covered bed where she planned to drift off after taking sleeping pills. It was meant to be graceful, even glamorous. But fate had other plans. Overcome with nausea, Velez stumbled toward the bathroom, the very place she had feared most. There, she collapsed, her head found in the toilet. It was a haunting end that mocked her deepest fear. According to her maid, Lupe had long been fixated on avoiding such an indignity. She once confessed to friends, "If I ever do it, I want to be too far from the bathroom to reach it." She even rearranged her bedroom just to make sure of it. Her suicide note made it heartbreakingly clear, "I want to die romantically, beautifully, not in a bathroom." The cruel irony of her final moments, the precise tragedy she tried so hard to escape, has cemented Lupe Velez's death as one of the most chilling and tragically prophetic stories in all of Hollywood history. Freddie Prinze and the gun he never stopped talking about. Freddie Prinze was a rising star in comedy, a young talent whose charm and wit lit up every stage. But behind the laughs was a darkness no one truly understood. In his stand-up routines, he often joked about suicide. What audiences didn't realize was that those jokes were confessions in disguise. In January 1977, at just 22 years old, Freddie shot himself in front of his business manager after a string of farewell phone calls to friends. It wasn't a spontaneous act, it was something he had talked about for years. His ex-wife, Kathy, recalled how he would point his finger like a gun to his head and say, "Bang, it's that easy." Even at the peak of his fame on Chico and the Man, Freddie told his co-star Jack Albertson, "I won't see 30, man. I'll check out way before that." And he meant it. The most chilling detail? Months before his death, Freddie bought the very gun he would use, casually showing it to friends and saying, "This is how I'm going out." Everyone thought he was just being dramatic, until the day he followed through, just as he'd said. Peg Entwistle, the sign that called her. Broadway actress Peg Entwistle gained haunting fame as the Hollywood Sign Girl, after she tragically leapt to her death from the letter H of the Hollywood sign in 1932, following a string of disappointments in her film career. But what most people don't know is that Peg had felt an eerie connection to the sign long before that final night. Her uncle, who she lived with, recalled how Peg often wandered alone through Griffith Park, drawn not just by the view, but by something deeper. She would stand and stare at the towering letters, telling him, "I feel like it's calling me." Even more unsettling? In her only completed film, 13 Women, Peg portrayed a woman who takes her own life. During the shoot, she chillingly told a co-star, "I have a feeling this role is practice for the real thing." The night she died, she left behind a short, heart-wrenching note. "I am afraid I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain." Was it depression? Desperation? Or something darker? An unshakable pull from the very symbol of the dreams that had betrayed her? The Hollywood sign didn't just witness her end. In some ways, it had been summoning her all along. George Reeves, the bullet that broke the Man of Steel. He played Superman on TV, but in real life, George Reeves couldn't outrun the darkness. In 1959, the beloved star was found dead from a single gunshot wound. Officially ruled a suicide, the case has haunted Hollywood ever since, with many insisting it was cold-blooded murder. What makes the story chilling is what happened in the months leading up to his death. Reeves had developed an intense fear of firearms. He refused to film scenes involving guns for Adventures of Superman, once telling producers, "I have a feeling I'm not bulletproof in real life." Even more unsettling, his fiancée Leonore Lemon claimed he had been plagued by nightmares of being shot. On the night of his death, during a quiet get-together at his home, Reeves went upstairs. Lemon casually told guests, "He's going to shoot himself." Moments later, a gunshot. Was it a tragic act of despair, or something far more sinister? We may never know the full truth. But one thing is certain. The man who played the invincible Superman seemed to sense that, off-screen, he wasn't invincible at all. Sal Mineo and the knife he feared. Two-time Oscar nominee Sal Mineo lived with a fear that turned chillingly prophetic. All throughout 1975, he confided in friends that he had an overwhelming dread of being stabbed. Not just attacked, stabbed. And in February 1976, that fear came tragically true when he was fatally stabbed by a mugger in the dark alley behind his West Hollywood apartment. What makes the story even more haunting is how specific his fear was, and how deeply it shaped his life. According to his brother Michael, Sal had begun carrying a whistle, avoiding walking alone at night, and even refused to keep kitchen knives in his home. He was that terrified. During the filming of Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Mineo even refused to shoot a scene where his character was stabbed. When the director, Don Taylor, asked him why, Sal reportedly replied, "I don't want to give anyone ideas." Was it a chilling premonition? Or a tragic coincidence? Either way, Sal Mineo's eerie fear, and the violent, all-too-specific way he died, remains one of Hollywood's most unsettling true stories. Clara Bow, the breakdown she saw coming. Clara Bow wasn't just Hollywood's first it girl. She was a blazing comet across the silent film era, adored by millions. But behind that magnetic smile was a woman teetering on the edge. At the peak of her fame, Bao stunned reporters with a chilling confession: "If I stay here, I'll end up in a straitjacket or a coffin." And in a tragic twist of fate, she wasn't wrong. By the 1940s, Clara had suffered multiple mental breakdowns and spent her final years in near-complete isolation, lost in a battle with mental illness that few truly understood. But what the public never saw was how deeply aware she had been of her own unraveling. Her personal doctor, Dr. Earl Conwell, later revealed that Clara had kept a secret journal, a haunting record of what she called the approaching fog. Even during the height of her stardom, she had been writing about strange visions, creeping fear, and a mind slipping beyond her control, early symptoms that would later be identified as schizophrenia. Perhaps the most heartbreaking moment came in her final interview. Just before she disappeared from public life, "I always knew the lights would go out in my mind before they went out on my career." She wasn't just a star. She was a woman who foresaw her own fall and couldn't stop it. Wallace Reid, the addiction he swore would kill him. Silent film heartthrob Wallace Reid had it all: charm, fame, and the adoration of millions. But in 1919, one tragic moment on a movie set changed everything. After a train accident left him in agonizing pain, Reid was given morphine to cope. As the needle pierced his skin, he reportedly muttered to the doctor, "This stuff will be the death of me." It wasn't just a throwaway line. According to his wife, actress Dorothy Davenport, Reid had long feared the shadow of addiction. It ran in his family, and he knew the odds were stacked against him. After that first injection, he looked her in the eyes and said, "I've just met my destiny." As months turned into years, morphine took over his life. Reid kept a private diary chronicling his descent. One chilling entry in 1921 read, "The studio keeps me going with more injections. They think they're helping me work. They don't see they're slowly killing me, but I do." By 1923, his body couldn't take it anymore. Reid died in a sanitarium while trying to break free from the addiction Hollywood helped create and ignored. His haunting prediction came true, not by fate alone, but by an industry that chose profit over protection. The studio cover-up. What ties all these eerie premonitions together isn't just the tragic accuracy, but how Hollywood studios silenced them. Swept under red carpets and buried beneath contracts, these cries for help were treated like background noise. And there you have it, 21 iconic golden era stars who chillingly foretold their own deaths. Was it destiny? A sixth sense? Or simply the cost of living too long in the glare of the spotlight? One thing's for sure, these legends didn't just make history, they seemed to feel how theirs would end. Which story shook you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if these haunting tales moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten Hollywood truths. Until next time, keep the spotlight burning.